The British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has said that the United Kingdom will hopefully begin deporting asylum seekers to Rwanda from the spring season. Now, this in fact was the original timeline for Rishi Sunak's asylum scheme, which is currently being debated upon in the British Parliament. The British government is hoping that one last push can revive its stalled plan to send some of these asylum seekers on a one-way trip to Rwanda.
Yeah, I'm still committed to the timeline that I set out previously, which was we aim to get a flight off in the spring. It's important that we get the Rwanda scheme up and running because we need to have a deterrent. We need to make it clear that if you come here illegally, you won't be able to stay and we will be able to remove you. That is the only way to properly solve the issue of illegal migration. Now, we've made good progress. Boat numbers were down by a third last year, so that shows that our plan is working.
The British government is, of course, planning to pay asylum seekers up to over $3,000 to move to Rwanda under a voluntary plan. Rishi Sunak's administration has said that this plan will help clear the backlog of refugees whose applications are to remain in the country were rejected. Now, Britain and Rwanda had signed a deal almost about 2 years ago. However, no migrant has been sent to Rwanda under the agreement. And last year, the British Supreme Court had stated that deporting migrants to the African nation was just unsafe. Lawmakers in the House of Commons are due to consider some changes that have been made to the Safety of Rwanda bill by the Parliament's upper chamber, which is the House of Lords. Now, amidst the rumours and the internal party tensions, the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has faced a challenging week, with speculation mounting about a potential leadership change within the Conservative Party. Now, despite the mounting pressure, Rishi Sunak has remained resolute, insisting on unity within the party. Rishi Sunak has faced a pretty tumultuous week that was filled with warnings from colleagues, plummeting poll ratings and also the defection of a former deputy chairman. Rishi Sunak has remained pretty loyal in his commitment to lead the party forward. He's also quite determined during a visit to the West Midlands, emphasizing his focus on the country's future rather than the internal politics. Moreover, the British Prime Minister has also pointed out the accomplishments that his administration has managed to achieve. And some of these include tax cuts for the rich, increase in state pensions, and also progress on tackling illegal migration. He said that all this was an evidence of his government's commitment to delivering for the country. Now, despite Rishi Sunak's assertion of party unity, speculation, of course, continues to swirl, with Business Secretary Kimi Badnoch urging colleagues to end the quote-unquote Westminster psychodrama and also to throw their support behind the Prime Minister. On the other hand, it is now being rumoured that the Conservative members of Parliament are considering to replace him with the Commons leader, Penny Mordaunt. And this is in an attempt to avoid a crushing general elections defeat. However, Penny Mordaunt has recently sparked anger after watering down a long-awaited proposal that was supposed to exclude those members of Parliament from the parliamentary estate that they were arrested on suspicion of a sexual offence. Now, the initial motion had required the members of Parliament who were arrested for these offences to be immediately removed. But now the members will only be excluded under the current watered-down proposal if they've been officially charged by the police. In Great Britain, the availability of places at nurseries and childminders has worsened for the preschool children across all age groups. Now, according to the Quorum Family and Childcare Report, fewer than 1 out of 3 councils have enough space for children under the age of 2. And this has turned out to be a bit of a nightmare for parents who say that they have to travel longer distances and even borrow money to meet with childcare costs. Now, according to Quorum's report, the Southwest was in fact amongst the worst affected areas, with 21% of the councils having enough spaces for children under the age of 2. But availability has dropped for preschool children across England, Wales and Scotland. And this comes as the government in England is expanding its funded hours offer, sometimes known as the free hours. Funded hours are available for 3- and 4-year-olds across Great Britain. In England, this scheme is due to expand to include all preschool children of working parents, with the first phase opening in the 2 weeks' time. The Department for Education has said that at least 150,000 children are set to benefit when the 15 hours free childcare a week will be offered to 2-year-olds of eligible working parents from April. The changes are expected to increase demand for spaces, but the early years sector has been struggling with underfunding and also a severe shortage of qualified staff. The costs have risen by almost about 6% this year, above the rate of inflation, which stood at 4% in January 2024. With the average annual cost of a full-time nursery place for a child under the age of 2 now standing at about $19,937. Meanwhile, the Department for Education in England has said that it is pretty confident the childcare market remains strong enough to deliver further expansion. All right, now to give us more insights in terms of the United Kingdom's political landscape and issues before the elections, we're of course being joined by Dr. Nigel Fletcher, who's a political analyst and commentator, and he's joining us live from London. Now, Dr. Fletcher, this is going to be a pretty interesting year ahead considering the many challenges that Britain faces, and of course Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, is going to have a pretty monumental task, convincing his own party members that he is in fact the right leader to lead the Tories into the next general elections.
Yes, indeed. I mean, he's got two rather difficult tasks ahead of him in the coming months. The first of which is, as you say, to convince his colleagues that he should lead the Conservatives into the next election. And of course, even if he's able to do that, he's then got the task before the end of the year, we assume, of convincing the electorate that he's the right person to remain as Prime Minister. And it doesn't look very promising on the second of those. The Labour Party currently is enjoying a poll lead over them of about 20 points, which is quite significant and has remained at that sort of size for some time. But the more immediate problem for him is this growing speculation about another change of leadership. And that's something which I think is probably going to rumble on for the next few weeks, particularly as there are local elections taking place at the beginning of May. And that's always a dangerous time for political leaders. The Conservatives are expected to perform very badly in those elections, and that, if there is going to be any movement on the leadership question, is likely to be when it will happen.
Indeed, and also considering, that among the many issues, childcare happens to be a key issue for the people in Britain. Tell us a bit about how this issue, such as childcare, could actually play out in the British elections.
Well, I think the government will probably be hoping that they can make more of that issue. It was something that was one of the major announcements in the budget was some improvements to the provision of childcare for parents and the availability of funding for that. So I think they will want to say that they've got quite a good story to tell on that. Clearly, the growing costs of childcare are a concern to many families when there is a cost of living crisis. The government will want to focus attention on what they are doing to help alleviate that. I think the problem they've got is that that's not really where the political focus is at the moment. For all the time that there is discussion about the Conservative leadership and about who might replace Rishi Sunak, those are all the headlines of the Westminster drama, and people aren't focusing then on the policy issues that the government would want them to be. But we don't know, I think, in a general election what the issues are likely to be that will come up. They have a habit of deciding for themselves in elections what the agenda is going to be. We've seen prime ministers in the past try to hold an election on one question and finding that the voters decide for themselves what they actually want to vote on. But there are a number of issues that the Conservatives probably want voters to look at, whether that's reducing inflation, which was one of the key targets that Rishi Sunak set himself, and what they will hope will be a growing economy by the time of the election after the recession that we saw reported for last year. They will want to point to things like the sort of economic improvements. They'll want to point at policies like the increase in entitlement to childcare. But I think the danger is that people are not focusing on policy issues so much as they're focusing on the infighting and civil war within the Conservative Party.
Absolutely, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Nigel Fletcher, for joining us and getting us that perspective there.
Thank you.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.